Are you DTFX?
Once again, here is Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your hosts, Dustin Lunt and Jake Trowbridge.
Welcome into another episode of Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football. I am one of your hosts, Jake Trowbridge. You are not used to this being the first voice that you hear out of the gate, but my co-host had the toughest of tough days at the old workplace today. So I thought I would be kind enough to take the reins and let Dustin have just a little bit more chillaxing than he's used to. So Dustin, how are you? Are you prepared for this?
Well, I'm never prepared for the show, but I'm doing much better now that we've got the AFC North hootenanny happening here. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for this.
Absolutely. We are kicking off our divisional breakdown series, one of our favorites here on the show. And we've brought a whole gaggle of wonderful people along for the ride this evening. And I don't want to waste any time. So let me introduce the representatives from the AFC North that will be discussing a few things with us here tonight. So as I introduce you, gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind, there's just a couple of things that I'd like from you out of the gate. As I introduce you and share your wonderful accolades, I also want you to think about why you became a fan of this team. And if you wouldn't mind sharing that, and then perhaps even more importantly, what you drinking tonight? So let us start with the representative from Pittsburgh, or for Pittsburgh, C.H. Herms, host of the Lateral Podcast, writer at Fantasy Pros. Thanks for coming on, Herms. How are you doing?
Yeah! Oh, baby! What's up? Hey. All right. I became a Steelers fan because my parents are from northwestern Pennsylvania.
There you go. Hey, that's as good of a reason as any. And I would say that's a fairly common one. I mean, not that specific location, perhaps, but the general theme and idea of it. Now, I know what you're drinking because you told us beforehand, but I want you to give the official endorsement here.
Hint water. It tastes like water that had fruit in it for a really long time.
That's the slogan, folks. Drinking water. And now we move over to the Baltimore representative here, co-host of the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast, writer at Going For Two, Thomas Tipple. Welcome to the show.
Yo, man, happy to be here. Look, it's real simple. The reason why I became a Ravens fan and why I got stuck through all the years of having to sit through Kyle Bowler, literally, not figuratively, trip over himself taking a snap. It's because as an Italian, I don't know if you know this or not, but the first quarterback ever to play for Baltimore was Vinny Testaverde, a Paisan himself. And for some reason, my family thought that would be good enough to get us in there. So because of Vinny Testaverde and his 470 years of football, I am a Baltimore Ravens fanatic. And tonight I am going with a Mike's Hard Iced Tea. And then just for fun, I have an Arizona Hard Iced Tea as well because... yeah, I'm double dipping the hard iced teas today.
There you double dipping the hard teas. You'll love to see it. And I'm a younger NFL fan, meaning I got on board later than most of the NFL. But I remember that fella Vinny. He seemed like a real good egg, so I'm glad you brought him on. All right, now we are moving over to something real special and somebody who's going to get maybe prodded more than everybody else on the show. So in advance, I apologize to the representative for the Cleveland Browns. He's the creator of JWB Fantasy Football, contributor for DLF. Wyatt Bertolone, how you doing, my man?
Pretty good. A little bit scared of what's to come. I'm a Browns fan because, well, I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and it's pretty much just that simple. You know, just root for the home team. I'm old enough to remember back when they were actually good, so that was nice. And then they got sold to Thomas's team over there, and they got to win a Super Bowl with basically our roster. So I don't know why he's complaining about any of the time he's had as a Ravens fan. But anyways,
complaining. I just hate Kyle Bowler.
As fate would have it, 2 hours before we were getting ready to record, I was in my basement fridge and I found a bottle of Brown's champagne. I lost essentially in the back of my basement fridge. It's not that bubbly anymore, but I'm drinking it anyways.
You had to wait a long time for a reason to crack that bad boy open.
It was fake.
Is it because you might actually have a quarterback now? Maybe.
I mean,
TBD. Yeah. We will discuss later on. Don't you worry. All right, and last but certainly not least, representing the Cincinnati Bengals, the co-host of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a writer at Fantasy Pros and Pro Football Network, Andrew Hall. Welcome in.
What's up, Jake? Good to be here. This is a hell of a murderer's row of the AFC North. I like this. All you guys, this is going to be a fun time. I became a fan of the Bengals when I went to UC. I started going there in 2000. And at University of Cincinnati, I was like, you know what? This Bengals team is pretty bad. I can be a fan of them. So I decided to become a Bengals fan. I think it was a couple years after that I bought this Hushmanzada jersey, right? Come on, old school Hoochie Vanilla. So yeah, I've been a Bengals fan ever since. Moved to Chicago and came back and still a Bengals fan. And it's nice to have been a Bengals fan for 20 years and kind of see a little bit, even if it's not a win, it's still a glimpse of some sort of victory. So I'll take it. I'll take second. That's better than we've done in a long time. So I'm happy with that. And I am drinking a Victory Golden Monkey is what I'm up to tonight. A nice delicious Belgian. So I figured, you know what? Hey, let's hooday on a Tuesday.
Oh, you know what I liked about that the most is that it rhymed.
Bingo.
So you had me sold. Now, Dustin, we don't have to talk about our Packers fandom because A, it's not the NFC North, it's the AFC North, and B, we talk about it plenty. But what do you think of this beverage that we have tonight from Oliphant Brewing? It's a honey wheat.
You know, I don't know if it's just because it's my first beer of the day after a long day, but this is friggin' delicious. I'm loving this. Nice, easy drinking, perfect on the first like truly summer day of the year.
I love it. I love it too, and I picked it out, so I should. Before we get into our drunk trade, I just want to throw it out to Toronto Dave in the chat here. It's starting early, Wyatt, and I'm sorry, but he says the Browns haven't been good since NAM.
Don't worry, they got David Bell now, though, so TD Dave is going to be right on there with you. He's going to be rooting with you on Sundays.
Yep.
All right, well, real quick, before we get into this divisional breakdown, we just want to take a little jaunt past our favorite section of the week here, the drunk trade of the week.
Drunk, hammered, drunk.
Drunk trade of the week.
Gentlemen, I'm going to throw this one up on the screen for us. Oh, you're going to have to definitely increase your screen size to read this bad boy. So let me read it off to you. It just doesn't seem that small in general.
Oh, no.
Okay,
That's what she
this
said.
actually went down in my league. All right. Ooh. This is from PD Stitz and JB Barry, friends of the show.
Oh, kickers.
On one side, this is a 10-team Superflex tight end premium league. Just as a little precursor here, PD Stitz says he had 9 cocktails prior to making this trade. And just for context, I believe it was something with coconut. What's the coconut one?
Pina colada.
Pina colada. That's the one, Herms. He had 9 pina coladas beforehand. So he sent away Baker Mayfield. A little Cleveland action there. Kicker Daniel Carson. That's right. This league has kickers. Linda is in this league, in case you were wondering. That is the thing. Also sent away Marquise Hollywood Brown, now an Arizona Cardinal, along with the 210 and the 308 in this year's draft. PD got in return Marcus Mariota, new quarterback for the Falcons, Tyler Lockett, Younghoe Koo, kicker for the Falcons, a 309 and a 409. Any first impressions? I'm going to throw it out to whoever has a good idea about this one. A, do you have a preference? And B, what could PD have done a little different here?
It's got to be JB Barry, right? Marquise Brown's the only worthwhile asset in any of this.
I was going to say, it's very hard for me to like any trade where somebody actually takes on Baker Mayfield. But I feel like Brown is the best piece there by like a lot.
And then a slight upgrade on the picks. Would anybody let us just hypothetically say if Baker Mayfield was taken off here, does that move the needle at all for anybody? And we're going to dive into that part a little bit later, but no.
Well, I'll say this. I think it's interesting. It's like one QB, one kicker, one receiver, and 2 picks on both sides. So it's almost like one of those trades you start to build. You're like, I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy. And you go to the other team. You're like, I'll bet he doesn't like this guy. I'll bet he doesn't like this guy. And you just kind of like build a trade and you're like, screw it. Let's send it. And then the other guy accepts. And you're like, what have I done? Like, that was pointless. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a lateral move. But I will say the Marquise Brown is the best piece. So I guess that side wins. I don't know.
P
I don't know.
get the kicker upgrade. So that's a shout out.
Yes.
So shout out Linda for, she's teaching me up on the kickers. That's a kicker upgrade right there.
That's big time. That's big time. I did want to let everyone know that Toronto Dave says his needle hasn't moved in a while, in case you were wondering.
You're amongst friends, Dave. You're good.
All right. That's enough for the drunk trade. Oh, my God. That was perfect, by the way. Can we borrow that for every episode? Because I would really like it. I'm just going to snip that part and do it without you anyways. We don't even need your permission. By hearing on the podcast that we would be able to do that. We're going to breeze past that. I don't think there is anything too pertinent to really discuss there outside of what we did. But I want to get into the meat, the main event with you all. We're going to go through team by team. We're going to talk about who they lost, who they gained, whether via free agency or the draft. And then just get a general feel for how everybody expects their teams to do, not just for fantasy, but in real life as well. So let us start with the Baltimore Ravens, because they're the first put on the sheet. So I want to talk about who they lost, which I think is more prescient than who they gained. They lost Marquise Brown that we were just talking about, lost Sammy Watkins, Devonta Freeman, Latavius Murray. Say notable losses. That notable is in quotations for some of these guys, including notable addition Mike Davis, who just signed with them today. But they drafted Charlie Kohler in the fourth, Isaiah Likely in the fourth, Tyler Beatty, I don't know, in the sixth. I'll learn his name if he gains fantasy relevance. But I do want to start with you, Thomas, on this division here. As we go through this, I think the one thing that stands out, well, maybe not the one thing, but the thing that's most recent is the addition of Mike Davis. So are we concerned at all about J.K. Dobbins this year?
Nah, I really do think Mike Davis is just cannon fodder for their practice field. Like when I came in and said that, like I'm not kidding. Last year, they had possibly the worst luck with running backs, and it was on that damn field. I just think a lot of training camp stuff. I think they just need a body. I think Mike Davis is a training camp body, and I think he's going to be there with Batty to supplant Justice Hill, who's cut. He's definitely dust. He won't be there, and I mean it's fine. He's a veteran presence, and they'll keep him on there, and he'll get like 3 touches a game. I swear to God, Greg Roman, if you give him more than that, we're going to have words. I'm going to need to use my censor button more often. But I think it's just there to help give a break to Dobbins and to Gus while they recover and get ready. So I think that's it.
Fair. Okay. Well, I do want to go around the horn. I don't want to talk about J.K. Dobbins so much as I'm curious if you had to, because this is more fun for me. If you had to ride with Mike Davis or Gus Edwards, let's call it in your flex spot for running back for this year, who would you rather have? Thomas, I want to save you till the end. I assume I know, obviously, based on your response. But Dustin, would you rather have Gus Edwards or would you rather have Mike Davis?
Can I pass? That's gross. I want to pass.
You may not. You must choose.
I guess I would say at this point, Mike Davis, just because he is the most healthy backup there. I'll take the health over the recovering Gus.
Andrew, thoughts on this?
Well, I like Gus's nickname better, so I'm tempted to lean that way. I mean, God, Gus Buzz, come on. That's just terrific. I like having that on my bench every week because really that's where either of these guys are going to be. So really, I don't know if it matters. I mean, I'd almost rather have, I guess I'm with your logic too. Like they just signed Davis. Maybe he's got a chip in his shoulder. He had a pretty bad couple of years, even if you want to go back. I mean, there is some value in saying new scenery. Maybe it helps, but Gus has been in that offense longer, so I probably lean Gus, but I see the logic. And again, neither one hopefully is ever seeing my starting lineup. Otherwise, that's a bad week.
Herms, if you had to, who are you going with?
Well, I mean, they're both bad. So that's not good. It's verifiably not good. It's bad.
Hashtag analysis. Nailed it. That was perfectly put.
And like at that, like you have to start going through the different tiebreakers to really figure out which bad thing you want. And I'm just gonna go with the old Twitter classic of who's got better quads. And at that point, it's very clearly Mike Davis. So I mean, sure, give me the quads. Fine.
Wyatt, are you in on the quad logic there?
Well, if you watched a wonderful video put out by the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast last year, you would know that the answer is never Mike Davis.
That's right. Wyatt listened and he got himself some smarten the fuck up and he stopped drafting running backs with perceived workloads. That was very smart, Wyatt.
I was one of the poor souls in the video.
You were. Next one.
All right, Thomas, let's throw it back to you. Let's throw Batty into the mix. If you had to start the year with one of those guys, and I emphasize starts because of potential, lingering injury questions and all that, especially with Gus. Batty, Davis, or Gus?
It's Gus, and it's not Mike Davis. Mike Davis, after week 6, only had 2 more games more with 12 fantasy points than Patrick Ricard had. So that's bad. And Patrick Ricard had 1. Mike Davis is so bad he got to play and only had 2 more games of 12 plus PPR points than Patrick fullback defensive lineman Ricard. It's not Mike Davis. It's never Mike Davis. Stop with Mike Davis. I would rather Batty.
You're selling me on Patrick Ricard. I got to go see if he's available. Like that guy sounds amazing.
Go look at how many routes he runs. How many routes he's put out there for, because Greg Roman decides it's a smart idea to leave a fullback out there with 3 tight ends and wonder why they can't throw the ball. I hate Greg Roman with a passion, but I would still rather have Patrick Ricard out there than Mike Davis.
You got to teach me that. That was gold.
It's so good. And this podcast allows cursing, but I like it better with the bleeping. I have to be honest. It really adds something.
Roman. I got to tone it. It hurts my worse. The only thing worse than Greg Roman for me is watching the Toronto Maple Leafs continuously lose out in the first round. Like they're side by side, and it's equally as bad for me.
All right, I don't want to
drama there.
I don't want to hang on the negative for you. I want to be able to move you in a positive direction here, Thomas. So I'm going to try my best by discussing what is hopefully a softball here. So with the draft, they didn't really add guys that, to me, or maybe to the average fantasy player, which is me, they didn't add guys that feel like they're really cutting into anybody's work. So they had 2 tight ends, which seems to be their passion in drafts, is drafting multiples. So they add 2 guys in the 4th. Do we think they factor into this offense at all, i.e. taking away from Mark Andrews or adding on to what he does?
So in 2019, when they had Hayden Hurst, he didn't really stop the Mark Andrews breakout that much, and he was still progressing. And that's what I think Boyle is gone. Nick Boyle has not been able to be healthy again after he got hurt. They tried to bring him back a couple times last year. It killed them. So they draft Kolar. Then they get Isaiah Likely because he can move. He didn't run very well at his 40, but he is a move tight end that, again, Greg Roman loves leaving him out there to run routes. So why not have a guy? And in 2019, when they were most efficient, it was with a fullback and 2 tight ends, or 3 tight ends, 1 running back and 1 receiver. That's, I think, what they want to go back to being. And maybe not even just to run the ball at nauseum, but to be more efficient where Jackson's comfortable. The only person I'd rather see is Likely, but it's not going to cut into Mark Andrews. He might miss out on a couple of big plays, but Mark Andrews' snap share is not going to go down, and his targets are not going anywhere.
I like it. I want to go around the horn here and ask, for 2022, are you comfortable drafting Mark Andrews in the first 2 rounds? Is it a smash decision? Do you have some pause about it, or are you opting out of that? Let's start with you, Wyatt. Are you interested in Mark Andrews in the first 2 rounds?
Maybe at the very end of the second round, maybe. But I do believe that they're going to be back to that run-heavy offense. And while Mark Andrews is, very, very good, very efficient, I do think his targets will come down a little bit just because the share in total will be less. So I'm a little bit weary about the first 2 rounds, maybe at the end of the second.
Herms, you smashing that button if he falls to the end of the second?
I mean, he's no Pat Fryermuth or anything, but it's pretty good, pretty good. I will say I'm really coming around to the whole idea of you either need to be aggressive with like the top 3 tight ends or literally just last pick or don't draft one. Like the in between, like I don't know. I've been looking at the numbers because I'm a nerd, and it just like that's the conclusion that I've drawn. So because of that, he's one of the 3 guys that I feel like warrants actually being drafted. So it's like, yeah, I mean, why not? After those 3, it gets dangerous.
I do agree with you for sure. I am a known tight end. What's the opposite of expert? I don't know. Schlub, a tight end doofus.
Novice.
I wouldn't even give myself that. I would not give myself the novice tag. I am worse than that. So I would have a tendency to agree with you there, Herms. Andrew, is that part of your draft strategy? Do you go for a tight end? Would it be Andrews?
I guess it depends, right? If I'm talking, like a super flex tight end premium where there's, quarterbacks are all up in there, maybe not. I could see that being a little trickier, but tight end premium with 1 QB for sure. If it's a 2 tight end league or you got like a 1.75 kind of a thing for tight ends, I do, again, agree with Herms entirely. I think that there are only a few that are worth drafting. And I think this is the answer that is kind of a cop-out, but it's still always true, is play your draft, play your room, know who you're playing against. And I think if you start to see, like if somebody grabs Kelsey at 105, right, it's like, okay, well, maybe I got to pay attention in the second round and see where kind of feel it out. If you're on the end, you got to reach with your second pick at 201. Maybe that's not the worst idea, because by the time you get back to 312, oh boy, you know what I mean? Like it could get bad real quick. So I think it kind of depends. I don't mind him in the second at all. I think that's actually a pretty good spot for him. But I could see the logic in passing. Let's put it that way. It depends on the draft.
Fair. Dustin, what do you think? Can you do it? Can you pull the trigger in the second?
I don't think it's a bad spot, but personally, I like to wait on tight end till way late in the draft. I don't like spending that draft capital early, especially in a redraft league like where it's just 1 year. It's just like, yeah, I'll do the waiver wire and make it work week to week if I have to, or maybe if I get lucky and get one of those tight ends that breaks out for a year. But typically early in the drafts, I don't like to spend that capital on them.
That is fair. I tend to be historically that way, but I'm trying to shift away from it. Toronto Dave, by the way, just want to throw out some other options for tight end novice, which would be Jabroni, Clown. I will take tight end Jabroni every day of the week. I think I might switch my.
I was going to say, like, instead of a tight end whisperer, you're a tight end screamer. Like, I don't know if I want to have tight end screamer on you. You know what I'm saying? Like, is that good or bad? That could be misconstrued. So
that nickname is perfect, honestly. So many ways. In so many ways.
I know I said this wasn't like a PG show, but Jesus, Andrew. I mean, you really ramped it up there, man.
What's wrong? What's wrong with tight end screamer? I don't understand. I couldn't help it.
Oh, my goodness. All right, let's get back to the Ravens here for one more. I really am interested here, Thomas. So talking a little bit already about what the offense should look like here with these additions and subtractions. But if we're looking at the focal point, it's Lamar Jackson. So for Lamar's fantasy value for 2022 especially, are you at all concerned? I mean, I'm not worried about his long-term dynasty effects here. I don't think anybody would be. But for 2022, do you have any concerns?
No, I don't. Because if they want to use Lamar Jackson's strength, which is the big tight end sets, then that's going to benefit him. That's what he's most comfortable with. I don't think he wants to throw to 3 or 4 different wide receivers. I think he wants to have one wide receiver, which is why Hollywood Brown had the most unique wide receiver 1 role on any. He was the smallest number 1 red zone target in the league. Like Lamar Jackson just wanted to look his way. Then he went Andrews and vice versa. Now he just has a better prospect to take Marquise Brown's spot in the efficiency category. Yeah, I think he'll throw more touchdowns this way. I think he'll have more options this way. I'm not worried about his fantasy value at all. And prior to getting hurt, the man was on pace to do historic things before he had gotten hurt. So if they do need him to throw the ball, you can ask Indianapolis. He can definitely do it when he needs to. Now let him do it when he's comfortable and has a healthy team around him. People who fade Jackson for last year often want to fade him because of the end of last year, not for what he was doing for the first 13 weeks, which was being the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in points per game. So, and he was doing it with a shell of a roster. So no, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about him at all. There's zero worry at all.
And also just thumbs up if we're in the Rashad Bateman fan club here.
Oh,
if anybody can get
all the
on
way
board
up.
with that piece of action. Yeah, I'm very excited. We're all excited, listeners. You can't see it, but it's thumbs galore here. Thumbs galore for Rashad Bateman, which I think everybody would be. Andrew, stop trying to make this another tight end thing. It's not.
I wasn't going to say it, but I was like, we're talking tight end screaming and lots of thumbs. What are you talking about over there, man?
Oh my God.
This was supposed to be a gentle comment, and then I saw your eyes shift about it. All right, let's move here over, since you just had to have a smirk about the thumbs comment here. Let's get to your Bengals here, Andrew. Let's talk about them. Some losses, if you want to call them notable, feel free. It's your team. But CJ Uzomah and Auden Tate are out the door. Hayden Hurst joins the club there. A little switcheroo at tight end. No real fantasy relevant draft picks unless we just talk about how they improve the overall offense, but nothing from an offensive skill set. So I guess my question is, will Joe Mixon finish as a top 5 running back again this year?
It's very likely. Yeah, I'll say this too. And it's weird actually being a Bengals fan and not drafting anybody of note, not losing anybody of note, not gaining anybody of note, and feeling more excited. Like, we did a terrific job. And I say we because I am a fan. I'm a season ticket holder. I think I'm allowed. I pay them money. But like, we did, I'm not an owner like you guys in Green Bay, but I try. But I think we did a great job addressing the defense in the draft and free agency. We got our offensive line shored up. They got to play together. We got to see how they gel. But I feel like they've addressed every possible concern. And I mean, I do think CJ Uzomah is a notable loss in the sense that he was a heart of the team. I do think Hayden Hurst is lateral in that move, and that's a nod to Herms, where it's like he's a lateral move in the sense of like he's just as talented. But to get back to your actual question, Joe Mixon, I think with this new offensive line and this defense actually hopefully being able to slow people down, that means more garbage time for Joe Mixon. I think that this is probably one of the best setups we've seen for Joe Mixon. Now, granted, that's somewhat a crutch argument, right? There's a narrative I'm building there, right? And it's not always true. Are they always going to be ahead by 30 points? I doubt it. But I can tell you from watching every game last year, there were a lot of times that if we could just get up with a lead 10, 15 points and let Joe Mixon run the ball, I'd be happy with it. We just couldn't get there. Our defense just kept letting it, like the Jets game, my God, the Browns game. Like, there are so many times that they just let the teams get back into it. And if we can slow them down, I think that bodes only positive for Mixon. So, yeah, I'm definitely on the Mixon train this year.
And no worries about Chris Evans, Captain America Bengals, sneaking in to steal away some targets.
I'm fine with it. Honestly, I feel like he needs to get a break here and there anyway. And as long as they're not giving the ball to Samaje Perine in the Super Bowl, I'm happy. You know what I mean? Like, what a great play that one was. But we were seeing that all year. It's just, I don't know the logic behind it. And I may never know because of that, the fallacy of rational coaching. You know what I mean? We always think coaches will do the right thing and they're idiots, as you were just getting into before there, Thomas. So it's like, at some point you have to realize that Perine ain't it. And I think maybe they're finally coming around to that. So I'm fine with Evans as like a third down, change of pace, give Mixon a breather kind of a guy. I'm not worried about him taking over the job. No.
Fair enough. Now I want to shift to the wide receivers. It does feel a little bit like who are we expecting to take a step back, if anybody here? And it might be tough to go through this list of fantasy relevant guys and actually point to somebody. Hopefully your rivals will be able to help me out on that just a bit.
I'm sure.
But I am curious for everybody in the group. Last year, this time we were talking about, of the 3 receivers there, who would we take at cost for redraft? Jamar Chase, of course, having the connection with Joe Burrow, and then the whole drops thing that happened. That was an issue.
Couldn't see the ball, right? All that stuff.
Yeah. Where's the stripe on the ball to really help him out? And then T. Higgins, seemed like a value. And then Tyler Boyd felt like an ultra value. And I'll take the beating to the kneecaps here. I was all in on Tyler Boyd last year. It's like, he's so cheap. That's the way to go.
Yep.
But
he's hard to quit.
Boyd.
Yep.
But let's rule him out for just this year, unless anybody's really, really into him. But out of the two, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and as of right now, I would say there's going to be at least a round difference between where those two are drafted. Do we have a preference for Chase or Higgins? Let's assume a round and a half in between. I've not fact-checked that. I'm just kind of guessing here. Andrew, starting with you, would you rather wait for Higgins or do you believe in Chase that much?
Again, it's the cop-out answer I gave before, right? It depends on your draft. I'm drafting in a home redraft league here in Cincinnati. If I don't get Chase at 102, I'm probably not getting him. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that's how it goes. But it's a home league, right? If I'm playing in a random league or, a free league or Scott Fishbowl or something like that, I might be willing to wait for Higgins because somebody might say, well, how is he going to do that well with Chase is getting all the attention and Chase is going to go in the first? Give me Higgins in the third. Like you said, the lower cost, lower risk, possibly the same, if not higher reward. So I'm kind of on board with Higgins in general. But I mean, I can guarantee you, if I'm on the clock at 106 in my home league and Chase is still there, I am running to the podium, even in Superflex. Like, I don't care. Like, he's just such a difference maker. So, yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong. But I guess, I'll lean what you said. I'll lean to the little cheaper asset and hopefully get some other value in the first or second.
Fair enough. Thomas, how about you? Any preference there based on presumed draft cost?
No, I want both of them. If I can get both of them in the same draft, I'll do that. So there's very few players that I would take above the mainstay quarterbacks, right? See, I'm a rushing quarterback only, so I don't include Burrow in this list. But if they were quarterback, so you go obviously Mahomes, Allen, Herbert maybe, and then Jackson, Kyler. There's two players.
Is that obvious?
Jackson and Kyler, two players, and it's Jamar Chase and it's Justin Jefferson. And I will happily reach for a Jamar Chase at 1.5. I will get him at 1.6. And then when that comes all the way back around, I will go and draft T. Higgins. The man is a top 12 player in points per game when he's out there. And Andrew's very confident in mix and repeating. I'm not. The man soared past his career touches last year, and Zach Taylor is #fake sharp and will continuously put out horrific plotters on the field. And when they do that, it's going to be Chase and it's going to be Higgins. I want both of them. I have no preference. I want them both. I will go and get them both so I can at least make some money while I cry as they destroy my favorite franchise.
A little bit of mudslinging, and I love it.
Yeah.
I want more of it. For best ball, by the way, I just want to throw out, I would absolutely do for both. I am team never stack wide receivers. It's not like it's worked out that well for me. It's more just stuck up in here now, and I'm stubborn about it, and I don't want to move beyond it. Herms, of the two or both, are you one or the other or both guy, or avoiding both?
Man, dude. Don't get me wrong. Like, Jamar Chase is, well, it also, just keep in mind, more of a redraft guy. So in terms of like dynasty, I mean, obviously I'd much rather have Chase, but that's also just expensive to do. But like, thinking just for 2022, I have a feeling people are going to be really excited about the year that Jamar Chase had and elevate him to a point where maybe he's like the wide receiver 3 or 4 or something. And in that case, I'm like, I don't know. Those were a lot of long touchdowns, my guy. Like, not to say that he doesn't have room to grow, but at the same time, it's part of it. And also, I think about like one of the distinguishing factors between the two is like, and again, this may also have something to do with the types of throws that Joe Burrow would make to Jamar Chase, but the catch rate, not as good as you would get with a Higgins. So it's like they're going to get around the similar enough amount of targets, and even if Chase does get more, like if his catch rate doesn't improve, then like Higgins catching more balls with like less targets. I don't know. The math works out somehow. I'll take the value of Higgins because Jamar Chase is going to be way too high.
I'm just going to believe you on math because I don't do math. And so whatever somebody tells me, whenever they say this is my math, I just say, I bet it is. And then I move on. So Wyatt, would you rather have Chase or Higgins, or a no preference here?
No preference. I'll happily take both. I mean, they're both like wide receiver ones basically. And the thing that I really like about them is that, one, the offense kind of works through them, I think. And two, they can have the big weeks that win you your weeks. So I'm good with having either one. Happily take them both on the same team. Don't care. Love it.
I do think it's interesting that people potentially are forgetting how much that T. Higgins came on towards the end of the last year. And I think people are still remembering those early season highlights from Chase. So I do think that the discount is curious. It's curious that they're not I don't think valued as close together as I think they should be. But who am I? I don't make ADP. Dustin, are you down with Jamar Chase's ADP or T. Higgins' ADP?
Well, I missed most of the conversation, so I will say Chase.
Okay. You'd rather take the... Yeah, I'm assuming here there's about a round and a half difference between the two. You would have to take Chase earlier if you want to, but you're comfortable with that?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't go wrong with either player, let's be honest. But yeah, I like Chase.
And let's be honest, I'm just going to draft Tyler Boyd again because I never learned from any of the lessons that people try to instill on me. Is outside of the mainstay guys, and Andrew, I'm, of course, more curious here for you because you study these guys so much. Outside of the main folks here, your stud quarterback, your stud running back, these stud wide receivers, is there any fringe guy on the team that you're interested in for fantasy, whether dynasty or redraft?
Hayden Hurst, man, I'm telling you, I think he's quietly got an option here to be a top 3 or 4 target getter on a team. Now, if we're passing on Andrews and we're passing on tight end and going late, I'm probably taking 2 of those, middle tier kind of guys. And honestly, everybody from tight end 4 to 44 is a middle tier guy. So I'm probably going to take 2 shots on those and just kind of see which one feels better and maybe play the matchups early in the season and redraft anyway. And I think Hayden Hurst has the potential to do that. He actually didn't do too badly in Atlanta. He got a little bit over his skis in some places and, wasn't the best at blocking and all this. But I do think that this offense is going to be a passing offense. I do think Mixon can still eat, like I said before, but I do think this offense is going to move. And I think Hurst is someone I'm trying to acquire in Dynasty, mainly because his cost is low. You can get him for draft picks right now for a 3rd or a 4th round sometimes. You can get him as a throw-in on trades, to kind of even it out or what have you. So especially in tight end premium or anything where there's a bonus given to that, it's like, why not put him on my bench and see what happens? He's the guy I'm taking a flyer on, partially because he's the only cheap option left. I mean, everybody else, Mixon, Burrow, the 3 receivers, all those guys are going to be gone in the first 8 rounds of your redraft. Even Boyd, I think, is going to go in the 8th or 10th round, which is either starter or first in on waivers or we're on bye weeks. You're really not getting any deeper options. There aren't any other receivers with Tate leaving that I'm really, excited about. So, yeah, I think Hayden Hurst is the sleeper on the team, the only option left.
I don't hate that. And he's just a very good dude. Hayden Hurst, yep. Good dude. Mm-hmm. JWB Fantasy Football, how are you in the chat as well? It's crazy. They say Chase scored within the wide receiver 36 in points per game in 75% of his games last year. Higgins was still the wide receiver 14 in points per game. Both at cost is a good answer. I agree with that. I think we can all. It sounds like we're all kind of on board.
Who gave Nate the JYB YouTube account for today, Wyatt? Because I know that's Nate. I'm laughing, but I know that's Nate. You're muted.
Wyatt's muted.
Yeah, because I've never podcasted before. I believe that's Skylar.
Oh, is he? All right. That had a little bit of Nate there. But with Andrew's point on Hurst, the last time and only time Hayden Hurst was the number 1 tight end, he was 15th in points per game at the position. That was with 88 targets. No reason why he can't hit 80 targets in a better offense than he was in before. Hayden Hurst should be gone after.
I like it. All right, let's move on to the Steelers here. Let's move on to the Steelers a little bit because there's a lot of moving parts with the Steelers. So talk about the opposite of the Bengals from that perspective. They lose Juju Smith-Schuster, lose James Washington, Eric Ebron, Ray McLeod. I want to shout out as the what am I trying to say? Not touchdown guy. I almost said touchdown guy. He wasn't. Dump off guy, though, was Ray McLeod for Ben Roethlisberger last year. Notable addition to free agency, Mitch Trubisky. We all go, okay, there's their starter for 2022 possibly. But no. They add Kenny Pickett in the first round, the only quarterback taken in the first 3 rounds. They had George Pickens in the second, another wide receiver, Calvin Austin in the 4th, Connor Hayward, a tight end in the 6th. Chris Oladakum in the 7th, a quarterback as well, because why not? Make it a party. So, Herms, I'm just curious, open-ended question here. What were you most excited about of all of the moves that happened over the offseason so far?
Not having to watch Ben Roethlisberger anymore. Honestly, when he was like, I'm retiring, it was just like, yes, that's all we really needed. Because, look, very appreciative for the couple Super Bowl rings great time. But I'll tell you what, over the last couple of years, watching that man just be the wet sack of potatoes trying to run around with the football. I mean, like honestly, it was like watching a wet sack of potatoes with like a rubber band slingshot attached to be like, okay, so you pull it back and then the football goes way forward. And then it's like one of those like contraptions you make as a child that you're sure is going to work. Like, like, oh, we're going to put this, apple inside this thing and it's going to launch like, hundreds of feet in the air and then only goes like 6 inches in front of you or something. Like that's watching Ben Roethlisberger try to throw a football. Like nothing else matters. Him not being there. Best thing.
So then
happy.
based off of that, then with the two quarterbacks who could potentially, and I'm sure you have a preference here, but between Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, let's say the worst case scenario out of those two happens, whoever that is for you. How much of an upgrade is that still for themselves and for these wide receivers this year?
The worst case scenario for either one of them wins probably 2 more games than Ben did last year. So that's, like it's the simple fact that either one of Trubisky or Pickett can both like run faster than 2 miles an hour and can throw a ball further than 7 yards. It's perfect. It's perfect because so many times, not even just last year, but like the year before as well, we'll have some like it's especially frustrating for Deontay Johnson. Like he'll just be out there. He's there. He's over here. And then it's just like, I got you. And then just barely, so many wasted opportunities. Also, fun fact, this is why people need to give Deontay Johnson more credit. Look at his career. First 3 years in the league. First year, he had Mason Rudolph and a guy named Duck. What? And then the next 2, just noodle arm sack of potatoes, Ben Roethlisberger. So if those stats don't tell you anything with what he was having to work with a quarterback, I don't know. Either way, yeah, better than Ben. I don't know. What am I even saying? I'm sorry.
It's a low bar.
It is a low bar, but again, if you even just walk to it and trip over it, that would be fine for you. It sounds like just for, just being able to enjoy the games. Now I'm curious for the group here. We're talking about the wide receivers. And of course you mentioned Deontay Johnson and how much that sucked for him and having to just watch him sort of be wasted. Now we have so many wide receiver additions coming through. So yeah, Juju is gone, but he wasn't really playing last year. So it's not like we can just compare that last year's offense with him. So now there's George Pickens. Now there is Calvin Austin, who I actually kind of like. There's a lot of good guys here. Are we worried at all about it being too spread out? Or is that silliness? Do we think Deontay will still remain the guy? Herms, let's start with you.
I mean, yeah, I don't really see much of a reason why he wouldn't. And I do understand the concern about there being too many cooks in the kitchen or what. No, that's the phrase. That's the phrase. But I don't know. Pickens is kind of just like either we eventually let Chase Claypool go, or like maybe if Deontay Johnson doesn't resign, like that's kind of what he's there for. But like Deontay Johnson's so good. He's so good. He's so good. And also just shout out Pat Freiermuth because he kind of counts technically. I'm throwing him in here anyway. From the time he took over that starting gig until he got concussed in that Minnesota Vikings game, homie led all tight ends, not just rookie tight ends, all tight ends in red zone receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns from within the 5, 10, and 20. So, like, don't think he's going away. All right. So we're going to talk about the receivers. Oh, there's a lot of them, but don't forget Muth. He is Luth. You cannot put that genie back inside the bottle.
Yeah, he's already Luth. You can't make him unluth. Mm-hmm. That would be uncouth. So, Wyatt, I want to go over to you here talking about these wide receivers real quick. So, like we did with the Bengals, because there are a lot of good options here, I don't have a strong ADP argument to make for any of them right now. I would assume Deontay is probably still going to be had in no earlier than the 3rd round. But just based on perception, would you rather attack Deontay early or wait for a guy like maybe Pickens, who is coming off of an injury, and take that risk?
It's definitely Deontay. Best Ball Mania drafts right now on Underdog. His ADP is in the early 40s. I like that a lot, actually. And, great players demand targets, and that's what Deontay does because he's a great player. So, I have no worries there. I'm happy to draft him at his spot. A little bit worried about Tipple now because I think they just drafted his replacement. It's maybe as soon as this year. I think Pickens is really good. I wouldn't be surprised if, 2 years from now, we're like, oh, Pickens was the best wide receiver in this draft. And he went to an organization that he needed to go to because this one thing is that, he might have some immaturity issues. And, who else but Mike Tomlin and the Steelers to rein that in?
Love that. Mm-hmm. Dustin, would you attack early Deontay, or are you waiting to take a chance here?
No, smash Deontay. No question about it. He's amazing. He's going to get his targets. He's going to do things with the ball he does. I have zero hesitations taking him where you need to there early in the draft.
Thomas, let's say hypothetically that he won't make it past the middle of the third round. Let's say that that's it. You can take him there or you can't take him at all. Would you do it?
Easy. I actually, in my first ever Devi startup, we're doing the NFL side first, and I happily started 5 straight wide receivers, and Deontay Johnson was one of them, and he's actually in the 4th round. But considering targets are earned, and last year he was 6th, or in 2020 he was 6th, and last year he was 2nd. I don't care if it's Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky. They could bring Duck back. Don't care. Good players demand targets, and targets he shall demand. I'll draft him 3rd round, no problem.
Don't even joke about them bringing Duck back. That's not it's not something that any of us are equipped to really deal with. Imagine how bad you'd feel if he actually was the starter week 1 after you said something like that.
Well, hey, I mean, good for Baltimore. So, I mean, if I can wish him into existence, as long as you keep him out of the CFL, I don't want him there either.
Andrew, for you, I'm interested. I want to tailor this to you. T. Higgins in the 2nd round or Deontay Johnson in the 3rd?
Man, that's tough. My homerism says Higgins, but Higgins in the 2nd still feels a little expensive, and I feel like the value on Deontay might be better. So in a vacuum, those two, not knowing anything else, I don't mind having Deontay on my team. Now, I'll be honest, it's tough, and I'm sure we all have this a little bit, right? Where you draft the player on your enemy team, right? And you're just like, I have to cheer for Deontay Johnson now. I really don't want to do, you know what I mean? It just feels wrong, right? But Deontay is one of those guys that is just so good at it. I love watching him play. When he gets the ball in his hands, he's explosive. I really do hope, and this is entirely genuine, Herms, I do hope the Steelers are better this year. I feel like iron sharpens iron, and the only way that we all get better is if all of us in this division rise to the occasion. I think the Browns did a hell of a job. Well, hang on a second. I'm getting the Ravens fan. Browns did a hell of a job, getting Watson. It's terrific. Let's bring it up, right? Let's do that. Except, nope, not Ravens. I'm done with you. Get out of here. I can't take it.
I'll give you that one for being the doormat for the last, 19 years in the division.
Finally, we finally get something for being the doormat. We were terrible for decades.
100%. Yeah.
But you had a consistently mediocre quarterback in Andy Dalton for 10 of them. So
0-5 in the playoffs, terrible. It got to the point where my father-in-law would call me whenever there was a primetime game. And he goes, how's Andy Dalton going to lose the game this week? And I'd just be like, he's probably going to fumble it in the 3rd quarter. And it's going to be a touchdown. I was just leaning into it. I'm like, he's terrible. So I'm just happy to be done with that. Again, this is not, I hope, I'm just speaking it into existence. This is not the pinnacle of our Bengals. We have some room to grow. And I know that may sound strange because we came in 2nd, but this team is young and they are ready to go. And I do think this whole division is pretty strong coming into this year. Ravens had one of the best drafts I've seen in the last 5 years. Just value after value after value, all the positivity on everything there. But the Steelers, obviously, now getting Pickett was apparently their guy. This whole division is new. This whole division is fresh and ready to go. I'm excited for it. So we're not the Bungles. We're not the AFC North from the past. We're here to stay. And so it's awesome being a part of a division like that.
I like that. That was sweet. Andrew, that was so damn sweet. That might have been the sweetest thing we've ever had on this podcast.
Positivity, baby.
I'd have to check the tape. To be sure. But one last question before we move off with the Steelers here for you, Herms. Pat Freiermuth, you've talked about him. I want you to talk about him more. I love me some Pat Freiermuth. Dustin knows this. I am a big-time fan of this guy. So let's look for Dynasty. Because I threw this out on Twitter not really knowing the answer, but I was just curious. I wondered if we overvalue sometimes the uber athletes, the freaks at the tight end position, and we discount a guy like Pat Freiermuth, perhaps, who doesn't jump off of the page as this ultra athlete. But in Dynasty, and I know you say redraft is your forte, but I just want to know, what is the gulf, generally speaking, between a Kyle Pitts and a Pat Freiermuth for you long-term? Big?
Whew, I mean, the thing that Kyle Pitts has going for him that Pat Freiermuth doesn't is that the entire franchise was like, okay, we're rebuilding this offense. Let's build it around that guy. Because it's Kyle Pitts' offense at the end of the day. And no offense to the recently drafted Drake London either, but I think even he knows that. So, when you have a guy like Kyle Pitts, which I don't know that any other team ever has, you're going to build it around him. So, but I will say, at cost, because everything is all about finding the bargains, clipping the coupons where you can in the draft. Dude, Freiermuth, bro, dude, I'll tell you what, more people, honestly, and for as much as people say, it's just oh yeah, Pat Freiermuth's awesome. But I also see a lot of people being oh, I don't know about this trade, man. I don't know. Or if they already have him or something, it's just I don't know, man. People are very non-committal with the Pat Freiermuth love. And I'm just pick a side, man. Pick a side, okay? Honest. And also, think about this. In a world where Kyle Pitts' father didn't have a twinkle in his eye, we would be talking about Pat Freiermuth much differently. You don't just call you Baby Gronk because, okay? That's not just a name we're just gonna pull out of thin air for fun, okay? The dude's so good, and like I said, that was a pretty big enough sample size of the NFL season where, as a rookie, he was the best red zone tight end. I don't know, man. I'm so passionate about this. I love Pat Freiermuth. He's the best. He's Luth. He is Luth. There's no other player in the NFL has ever been Luth. So.
It's hard to disagree with that. You can check Pro Football Reference. I'm sure they'll confirm that. By the way, I want to throw that out there. From week 6 on, Pat Freiermuth actually outscored Dalton Schultz in points per game. I just want to put that out there into the world for you there, Herms, before we move on. All right. It's come to the climax, the real showtime of this one. The Cleveland Browns rep is standing ready to go. Wyatt, before I get to my questions, I actually want to pose to you, I threw out on Twitter before this. I just said, if you could ask a Cleveland Browns fan one thing, what would it be? Nate Povol just simply asked, why?
Do it.
Do you have, I mean, you answered a little bit of this up top, but if you want to elaborate, feel free.
I like pain, I guess. I have a lot of trauma. I don't know. I grew up in Northeast Ohio. I love the Browns, always have since I was little. Always watching football every Sunday with my father. Grew up playing fantasy. He's been playing fantasy for over 30 years. So I've been following and playing fantasy for almost all of my life. And it was always the Browns we're watching every Sunday. So it's pretty easy that way.
Fair. All right. I will leave off of this. I want to move on to a more legitimate question here, let's say. This one comes from Jesse Schuster, says, does the Watson suspension loom large for you? Basically, the assumption here being, I'll paraphrase, but if they invest all this money into a guy with these illegal stipulations, and then if he doesn't play, let's say for a good chunk of 2022, what do you think happens with the team? Do they keep Baker Mayfield for that insurance, do you think?
Well, financially, they're not worried at all because they construct the contract so that he only gets paid $1 million this year. So, that was part of the reason, this all happened, is they did that so he could still get his money even if he gets suspended for this year. But I am positive Baker's not throwing a ball for the Browns again. That's why they got Jacoby Brissett. Baker has no interest in playing with this team, and I think they have to move on in some way. I'm assuming he's just going to end up getting released at this point because no team wants to pay an asset for him when they can just wait it out and try and pick him off of waivers.
I mean,
shout out to a very big bidding war for him. Go ahead, Thomas.
Shout out to the Browns for upgrading their backup quarterback position with the addition of Jacoby Brissett. Very important. Very important.
So rude. Real quick, I'm curious if Baker gets released. Just real quick around the horn, where does he end up? If he gets released, who picks him up? Let's end with you, Wyatt. So, Dustin, where do you think he goes?
Commanders.
Oh, just as a little bit of competition with Carson there
Yeah.
to make everybody miserable. I kind of like that. Just for the miserability aspect of it, especially. Thomas, where do you think he goes?
The Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Ooh, deep cut.
Ouch, that burns. Andrew?
I'll go Seahawks because Drew Lock ain't it.
I think that's a very logical landing spot. Herms?
I will also say Seahawks and point out that a Seahawk is not a real bird.
Oh,
That's bad.
we're learning tonight. This is good.
They've lied to us for how many years now? This shall not stand. All right, let's talk about who the Browns truly lost and added here. So they lost Austin Hooper, Rashard Higgins, Jarvis Landry kind of bearing the lead there, but it does not seem like he's going to go back there. Added Watson, Amari Cooper, Jakeem Grant, Jacoby Brissett, we talked about as the new backup there, and then drafted David Bell in the 3rd, Jerome Ford in the 5th, Mike Woods in the 6th. So, same question to you, Wyatt. Out of all of this, what are you most excited about, if not for 2022, then just in general for the franchise going forward?
Well, I mean, it's nice to have a really good quarterback, just ignoring all the terrible things that may or may not be looming with him that I won't get into now. But also getting Amari Cooper is great after losing Odell technically last year and Jarvis Landry this year. And I really like David Bell in the 3rd round. Outside of him not being athletic, which we know doesn't actually matter that much for wide receivers, he's really good, extremely productive, great route runner. I think he's going to step right in as the starting slot receiver. I would say he's comparable to just being a bigger Jarvis Landry. I think that's like his trajectory in the NFL. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited for David Bell in the 3rd.
I like it. And leading into this here, because they did draft him in the 3rd, and like you said, yeah, he's maybe not the most athletic guy, but his big competition right now is Amari Cooper. So, again, out of these two guys, who is the immediate dude in the offense? Is it Amari Cooper or is it David Bell? Herms, let's start with you. I'm curious, out of these two guys for 2022, who is the guy?
I mean, I would assume Amari Cooper, but at the same time, like all 3 of these players, like the 2 receivers and the quarterback, like they've never played together, because it's a similar exercise that we kind of did last year with, Matthew Stafford going out to LA. Like, oh, is it going to be Kupp? Is it going to be Woods? I think we're going to have a better idea once we start getting some reports from, like off-season workouts and camp and stuff, because like the type of rapport that gets built early on is something that I think holds some weight. Or if we find out Deshaun Watson is eating breakfast with one of them regularly, if we learned anything from the Stafford thing, it's, players who eat breakfast together succeed together. So like, I don't know, but if I'm just going to bet on the thing most likely to happen, it would probably be Amari Cooper, just because Amari Cooper is a lot better than David Bell.
Fair. Andrew, agree, disagree with that?
I mean, what is Donovan Peoples-Jones gone? Like, I think he actually did pretty well last year. Yeah, the DPJ. You know what I'm saying?
If you think he's the guy, feel free to toss his name into the hat here.
No. I'm just saying he's not dead. I don't think he's the guy, but he's definitely going to be there. And I don't think Bell's the guy. He's the rookie. He's very polarizing. If you ever get into a Twitter argument with someone who likes him, look out. It's rough on them Twitter streets. But I'm saying, like, I don't know who else it would be other than Amari Cooper. I mean, you're right. He hasn't played with Watson, and Watson's obviously hasn't played for a whole year. He's a little rusty. I mean, there could be a couple of weeks where it's, 14-3 and the Browns just don't get moving. I mean, like, it could be bad. I think they're going to get it together eventually. And I think in terms of dynasty, this is, more than 1 year, but it could be a rough start. And I think if Amari Cooper is the guy with, 3 catches and 56 yards, I don't want anything to do with that whole team in fantasy. I'm just, But I mean, again, if you're saying if he's the guy on the team, sure. But I'm pretty much avoiding all Browns other than Nick Chubb at this point.
Thomas, you on the same track? Are you avoiding these guys altogether? Does one stand out?
As I wrote for goingfor2.com, Amari Cooper is the fantasy football middle child, right? He's not young enough to be like cool and everybody wants to boost him up. And he's not quite old enough to get his seniors discount at Denny's. So he's not like a cool aging veteran value. He's just in the middle. And I think he is the guy. But over his career, if you think that's a good thing, Amari Cooper in 108 games played has only finished as a top 12 wide receiver 23% of the time. He's actually finished as a wide receiver 3 or lower 58% of the time he's been on the field. So it's, Herms, it's gross. I went and you can find all that going .com. It's gross. And he played with Dak, who everybody loves, and he played with young Carr, which, was really cool for a little while, little MVP boost there before he hurt his finger. He's just always been disappointing with just enough boom weeks to sprinkle it in. And I don't know how many boom weeks there's going to be in Cleveland, who is probably one of the only teams that come close to running the ball as much as Baltimore. It's terrifying.
Oh my God, Dustin! It feels like he was speaking your love language throughout
I know.
the entire thing. Dustin's not a big Amari Cooper fan.
I'm like half Chubb right now. I'm just not gonna lie.
We are all over the place. This is not PG anymore.
We abandoned PG a long time ago, Andrew.
Just
with
checking.
Fingers and tight ends, and
I was doing my best to push us there. Just hoping.
I'm glad I could do that for you during our climax.
Touche. All right, then, Dustin, for you, I'm going to make it very clear. David Bell, are you excited? Because you're not excited about Amari, I assume.
I mean, if I had to pick one of the wide receiving options on this team, I would probably pick Amari Cooper. But based on where you're going to have to draft him, I'll be avoiding him basically at all costs. I'll take one of the cheaper options, whether it's David Bell or Donovan's People-Jones.
All right. And Wyatt, after all of this discussion, where do you sit with these guys?
I do think Amari Cooper is the guy. I also am not drafting him at cost. He's so confusing because, we all watch him, and he's, really amazing at what he does. He's, one of the best route runners in the league. He has all the talent in the world, and yet is consistently disappointing. I have no idea, I can't explain it. So, but I do think he's the guy for that reason, that he does have all that talent. He is proven. David Bell, the rookie. I'll say, though, by season's end, I wouldn't be surprised if the gap between David Bell and Amari Cooper is closing.
Yeah. It's actually crazy you say you won't draft him at cost now, because last year was the first year, aside from his rookie year, where it was actually 12.5. This is the first time since 2015 he's not being drafted inside the top 12. And right now, he's currently the 25th wide receiver off the board, which I actually think is draftable. So it's kind of weird how he's finally hit where he should have been going a long time ago. When I wrote that article, it blew my mind that last year was the first time people were finally nope, forget it, with Amari Cooper. So I think now he's actually kind of
isn't actually bad. It's just I think there's people in that area that I would much rather have.
Yeah,
you can get Darnell Mooney in the same spot, and I would just much rather have him because I think he's going to be around 150 targets, if I'm being honest, with Chicago, and I'll just take that on the the ascending player over someone like Amari Cooper.
Yeah,
interesting. I don't hate that.
Children, man.
They're the worst. I wouldn't know. I'm not one, but it sounds like they're the worst. Wyatt, last.
Right, right, guys. Am I right?
I am.
Am I right?
These fucking guys. All right, Wyatt. Last question for you here. Then we'll get everybody out. But Nick Chubb, we got to talk about him. Dustin's half Chubb. Are you full Chubb on Nick Chubb? Are you bought in this year for fantasy? Or when I say bought in, I mean. He's never a guy who's going to get a ton of targets, but he's going to be a top 10 guy. Are we agreed?
I am always full Chubb for Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is the one player where my homerness comes in every year, and I can't help it. He's my favorite player in the NFL. I always have him ranked higher than he should be. I don't care. I draft him way too much every year. I'm the wrong person to ask about Nick Chubb because I am blinded by him.
Blinded by the light.
I was going to go somewhere else, but I'm glad you said light.
Were you falling back onto the Chubb references there?
Oh, God.
Potentially you were.
So, yeah, I'm glad.
Talk about a tight end screamer.
That seems like about as good a place as any. to wrap up this show. I just want to appreciate everybody verbally here for coming on to the podcast. I know that was a weird way to say it, and I don't care because you guys make me feel comfortable enough to say weird things like that. This has been amazing, a great way to kick off this series here. I wish all of your teams the best luck. I hope everybody ties and has a good time, but I know because you guys don't feel that way. What I would love to do as we go around the circle here, I want you to tell everybody what you're up to, where they can find you, any projects, etc. in the works. But I also want to know where you think your team will land at the end of this year in terms of a win-loss record. Take a stab in the dark. Where do you think you will fall? Let's start with you, Wyatt, because you got so much guff here, and God damn it, you were so good about it. So where do you think your Browns finish this year, and where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at WyattB_FF. You can find basically everything I do at jwbfantasyfootball.com, and hopefully you'll be seeing some articles from me coming soon at Dynasty League Football. As for my Brownies, I'm going to say that Deshaun Watson's suspension gets pushed off until next year, and they go 12-5.
Woo! That's spicy. I like it. I love the optimism. All right, Herms, over to you.
Well, you can find me out here in these streets on Twitter at Herms NFL. I have a podcast called The Lateral Show. Woo! We do it. It's a fun time. I say the F word a lot. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Words got really hard there for a second. I don't know. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all those places. Wherever Anchor puts it, I don't know. I have Anchor do it so that I don't have to think about it. And then I have another hat. It is for Fantasy Pros. That's where I do stuff, including writing and stuff, sometimes editing. I don't know. Find me there. And then also, I am the podcast producer for the Devy Royale. If you're interested in Devy, Campus to Canton, college football in general, learning things, I don't know. Listen to it because it's good.
Agreed. And where do you think your Steelers are going to end up here?
I don't know. I was hoping you would forget because I don't know. I was just like, it's such, honestly, like, dude, like, theoretically, they should improve a little bit based off of what they did last year. Maybe like 10 or 11 wins, but the division's so tough. We all play each other twice. I don't know, man. I don't know. Like,
that's a fair answer. That is a mighty fair answer. All right, Andrew.
Well, Bengals went 10-7 last year, made it to the Super Bowl. Pretty happy with that. So I'm going to say 11-6. I'm going to give it a little conservative. I do feel like this is a tough division. Everybody else got tougher. It's not going to be a cakewalk. I really just think we're all going to beat each other up, like Herm said. It's going to be brutal. But you can find me at Fantasy Pros. I do write there pretty much all year long. I do Dynasty content for them. And then I do redraft weekly content at Pro Football Network. Yes, that's right. Herms and I are on the same team. Also, one of the many co-hosts for the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a weekly podcast on Thursday nights where we talk about junkies. I'm sorry, no, we talk about Dynasty. No, I'm just kidding. But we talk about different things that can help your Dynasty league and help your Dynasty team outside of player evaluation, more of the game within the game. You know, talking about trades, talking about strategies, when to do what, and all this. So it's a good time. So find us over there. And you can find me on Twitter. All of my stuff's there at Andrew Hall FF.
I love it. All right, Thomas, wrap us up here.
Well, you can find me over there, Thomas Tipple FF, over there on the Bird app. Some people say you can even find me in the mean streets of suburban Canada out here in Winnipeg. If you dislike what I say about my takes, come over here and find me in the frozen tundra. It's no problem. It's actually something I have in common with you boys over there in Green Bay. It's frozen here. Other than that, you can find the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast, wherever your podcasts can be found. You can also find all of our work at True North FFB, as we recently partnered with them. And as of Saturday, you can find the Fantasy Walkabout exclusively on Triple Play Fantasy, where it will be the only place to stream it there. Go do that. All of the things. And go follow all of the people, because they're all fantastic, but your teams are trash.
Yeah.
Except Baltimore will finish in a pit of despair, likely third in the division. I don't see them really having a better record than they had last year. It's nothing really to do with anything other than the schedule is really tough for the division, and I don't think with all the, like, yeah, they're getting players back, but they're all coming off major injuries. The secondary's got two corners that are going to be recovering from injuries. Their two biggest weapons in the offense outside of Jackson are coming back for big injuries, and we don't even know if their left tackle can play football anymore. I think the hype for Baltimore outside of Jackson is way too high. Tone it down. Third in the division and a pit of misery.
Man, I've never seen somebody walk back the trash talk so quickly in my life. But you ended in a very realistic place, which I honestly love. That was the perfect balance of salty and sweet. You're like, what's those little Swiss nut roll things? You know what I mean? You guys have those in Canada? It's like a Swiss nut roll.
I prefer cannoli. The food of my people. I prefer cannoli. I'm a giant fat cannoli. The food of my people.
Okay, you can be the cannoli as well. You're right, Wyatt. I don't know that Swiss nut roll was ever anything, to be clear. All right, Dustin, how would you like to wrap up this episode?
Well, I just want to again say thank you to all of you for coming on the show. It was a lot of fun, even though I took more of a back seat this evening. It was great cutting it up with all of you. Go out and find us wherever you find your podcasts. We are out there. Give us a rate and review. It helps other people find us, which we do appreciate. Hit us up at Drinking Fantasy on Twitter if you have any fantasy related questions or not. We're here for all of it. You can find me at FF Dusty Dog if you really want to. I throw out stuff occasionally. And that's about it, Jake. What about you?
You can find me being just as dumb at Jake Trowbridge on Twitter. Yes, just reiterating everything that you said. I'm glad you got to take a back seat for once because you typically do all of this, and this is hard. I don't know if anybody's ever done this before. This is hard. So just all of the props to Dustin for normally taking all of this over. But again, love you guys for coming on. Much appreciated. And until next time, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.
That wasn't the right outro at all, but this one is.